Welcome history buffs and conspiracy sleuths to a journey through the hidden corridors of the past. You've just tuned in to Given the Fallout podcast.
For the United States government to solve the
With your hosts, J and D.
He's terrible. She's a terrible old bag. Oh, she's an old bitch in my estimation.
Given the Fallout is your passport to the past, where reality often blurs with myth.
Given the Fallout.
Given the Fallout.
J. Edgar Hoover was born on January 1st, 1895, in Washington, D.C. He came from a middle-class family and showed an early interest in law enforcement. His father, Dickerson Hoover, died in 1921 when J. Edgar was just 26 years old. This loss had a significant impact on Hoover and his family. After his father's death, Hoover became very close to his mother, Annie Marie Sheitlin Hoover. The loss of his father and his close relationship with his mother influenced his upbringing and his career path, leading him to a lifetime of public service. Annie played a significant role in his life, and they maintained a strong mother-son bond throughout his adulthood. His mother was the only person who had permission to access his personal diary. Annie Hoover was a dedicated mother who supported her son's education and career aspirations. She encouraged his pursuit of law enforcement and public service. Hoover lived with his mother until her death in 1938, when Hoover was 43 years old. Hoover attended George Washington University, where he studied law and worked part-time at the Library of Congress. During his time there, Hoover worked as a messenger and a clerk. His duties involved tasks such as delivering documents, arranging books, and helping with administrative work. This experience allowed him to develop organizational skills and gain exposure to the workings of a large institution, which likely contributed to his later career in law enforcement and administration. He literally worked his way from the bottom up and took everything he could from each position to better his skills. In 1917, at the age of 22, Hoover joined the Department of Justice, beginning his career as a clerk and then quickly moving up the ranks. He initially worked in various divisions, including the War Emergency Division and the Alien Enemy Bureau, where he focused on issues related to national security and wartime activities during World War I. Hoover's career took a significant turn when he was appointed as Special Assistant to the Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer in 1918, and the following year was made head of the General Intelligence Division, the GID, of the United States Department of Justice. He was in charge of the GID's operations, which focused on monitoring and investigating various radical and subversive groups in the aftermath of World War I. He played a significant role in the Department of Justice's efforts to combat perceived radical threats, particularly during the First Red Scare. The First Red Scare was a period of intense anti-communist hysteria and fear in the United States that occurred after World War I, roughly from 1917 to 1920. There were several key factors that contributed to the First Red Scare. The Russian Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, which led to the establishment of a communist government, sent shockwaves around the world. Many Americans feared that similar revolutions could happen in the United States. There was labor unrest, anti-immigration sentiment, particularly directed at immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe, who were associated with radical political ideologies. There was anti-communist propaganda and fear-mongering in newspapers and from political figures, leading to an overall atmosphere of paranoia. And there were the Palmer raids. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer, with the assistance of J. Edgar Hoover, conducted a series of raids and arrests aimed at suspected radicals and anarchists. These raids were known as the Palmer Raids, and were marked by civil liberties violations. So what triggered these raids? On June 2nd, 1919, there were a series of bombings, including one at the home of Palmer in Washington, D.C. Palmer responded by launching a series of raids aimed at apprehending suspected anarchists and communists. He believed that these groups were plotting to overthrow the US government. Between late 1919 and early 1920, the Palmer raids involved the arrest and detention of thousands of individuals, many of whom were immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. These raids were often conducted without search warrants or proper legal procedures. Particularly non-citizens who were deemed undesirable or subversive. The most famous case is the deportation of Emma Goldman. She was a Russian-born anarchist, a political activist, and writer, and she played a pivotal role in the development of anarchist political philosophy in North America and Europe at the time. And Alexander Berkman. He was a Russian-American anarchist and author, who were prominent anarchists. The Palmer raids were highly controversial and criticized for their violation of civil liberties. Many believed they were excessive and indiscriminate, leading to the arrest of innocent people. The Red Scare gradually subsided, in part due to the lack of concrete evidence and a widespread conspiracy. Additionally, the public began to view the raids as government overreach and abuse of power. In the end, the Palmer raids failed to uncover a widespread communist conspiracy, and they are often seen as a dark chapter in American history that highlighted the tension between national security concerns and civil liberties during times of perceived crisis. Hoover continued to be involved in anti-radical activities, which included monitoring and investigating individuals and groups believed to be a threat to national security due to their political ideologies. Hoover's dedication and effectiveness in these roles led to his rise within the Justice Department. He gained a reputation for his anti-radical efforts and commitment to national security. In 1924, when the Bureau of Investigation was reorganized and renamed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Attorney General Harlan F. Stone appointed J. Edgar Hoover as the acting director. Later that year, he was officially named the director of the FBI. He was only 29 years old. The primary focus of the FBI in its early years was on criminal investigations. The agency investigated a wide range of federal crimes, including bank robberies, kidnappings, interstate crimes, and crimes involving multiple states. Under Hoover's leadership, the FBI expanded its activities and investigative methods. He focused on modernizing law enforcement, utilizing scientific methods for crime detection, and establishing the FBI as a national law enforcement agency. His vision was to lead all law enforcement into an era of professionalism. He immediately recruited a group of neatly dressed, college-educated agents. These well-educated federal agents went head-to-head in the 30s with bank robber gangs who were using vehicles and machine guns with deadly effect. Hoover's agents, who weren't very streetwise, lost initial encounters with prominent figures at the time, Pretty Boy Floyd, the Dillinger Gang, and Babyface Nelson. Hoover decided his agency had to adapt to overcome. He waived the college education requirement in some cases. He aimed for recruitment of local law enforcement officers with a history of manhunting and winning gunfights, and it worked. Hoover and the FBI were instrumental in pursuing and capturing high-profile criminals. These pursuits and captures were often highly publicized and contributed to the FBI's growing reputation as a federal law enforcement agency capable of taking on organized crime and violent criminals. Hoover single-handedly controlled every aspect of the FBI. He also controlled public perception of the FBI via the media. Hoover was a PR master and knew that if anyone was going to hand over their crime tips, they needed to be able to trust the FBI was the most upstanding and reliable force. Hollywood and the media could not reference the FBI or its agents without passing their portrayal by Hoover. So much so that in 1954, Congress made it illegal for anyone to depict the FBI for commercial purposes without the approval of the director of the FBI, Hoover. During the 1930s and 40s, the FBI intensified its focus on surveillance of suspected subversive groups, communists, and anarchists. This was exacerbated during World War II when the FBI expanded its surveillance efforts to counter espionage and sabotage threats, including monitoring suspected Nazi sympathizers and Japanese spies. Following World War II was the Second Red Scare, a period of intense anti-communist hysteria and fear in the late 40s and 50s. Senator Joseph McCarthy played a prominent role in fueling the Red Scare with his sensational claims of communist infiltration in the US government. He famously waived a list of alleged communists working in the State Department. The FBI provided information and investigations into alleged communist infiltration in the US government. Overlapping the Red Scare from the late 1940s through the 50s and into the 60s was the Lavender Scare. It focused on the fear and persecution of LGBTQ+ individuals, particularly those working in government positions. While J. Edgar Hoover was not the sole figure associated with the Lavender Scare, his FBI played a significant role in identifying and purging LGBTQ+ employees from government jobs. So what was the fear around LGBTQ+? The perception that LGBTQ+ individuals were susceptible to communism during the Red Scare and Lavender Scare eras was rooted in several misguided stereotypes, misconceptions, and prejudices. These perceptions were not based on actual evidence, but were driven by fear, prejudice, and political agendas. There was social stigma to being gay. Being openly LGBTQ+ was taboo, and many people lived in the shadows due to societal discrimination, which made them vulnerable to accusations and blackmail, which could be exploited by those looking to identify alleged security risks. Some officials believed that they could be easily blackmailed by foreign agents or communist sympathizers. The idea was that if someone's sexual orientation was hidden or considered shameful at the time, they might be more likely to cooperate with foreign entities and protect their secrets. LGBTQ+ communities often existed as hidden or underground subcultures, which made them appear mysterious or potentially rebellious to those who did not understand or accept them. This contributed to the belief that they might be involved in activities perceived as un-American. There are also the perception of deviance. Homosexuality was viewed as a form of deviance or moral corruption. This perception led some to believe that LGBTQ+ individuals were more likely to engage in subversive or anti-establishment activities, including communism. The government's aggressive pursuit of communist sympathizers led to guilt by association. They themselves could come under scrutiny, leading to a broader perception of LGBTQ+ individuals as potential threats. The Lavender Scare resulted in the firing of many LGBTQ government employees and created a hostile environment that forced many others to conceal their sexual orientation. It also affected heterosexual individuals who were single, those living alone who were assumed to be hiding their sexuality. It had a bigger impact on people than the Red Scare, but is less known. One such person who was discharged from the Air Force in 1955 was Helen James. Helen James enlisted in 1952 and had an excellent service record. she was promoted to airman second class. But when she was stationed at Roslyn Air Force Base on Long Island, New York, she came under scrutiny by the Office of Special Investigation. One night in 1955, she was sat with a friend in a car eating sandwiches when an officer shone his torchlight into her eyes and took her into custody. She was interrogated for hours. Investigators told Helen that if she didn't sign a statement they put in front of her, they would tell her family she was gay. She signed, and she was discharged as undesirable. Serving personnel were ordered to inform those they served that if they suspected a fellow service member to be gay, they should inform them. It's estimated around 2,000 to 5,000 people who may have been gay were dismissed from the military during that time. Like Helen, they received no severance pay or veterans' health care coverage. She fought for 30 years to have her discharge upgraded, to be recognized as a full serving person in the military, to have her achievements recognized. And in 2018, at the age of 90, she finally had her upgrade to honorable discharge. There have been various speculations and rumors about J. Edgar Hoover's personal life and the nature of his relationships. Over the years, several individuals have been suggested as potential romantic interests or companions, but it's important to note that these claims lack substantial evidence and often rely on anecdotal accounts and hearsay. Some of the individuals whom people have speculated Hoover may have had a relationship with include Clyde Tolson. Clyde Tolson was Hoover's close associate and the associate director of the FBI. Their close friendship and subsequent social interactions led to persistent rumors about their relationship. While there has been speculation about a romantic connection, the exact nature of their relationship remains a subject of debate. Hoover and Tolson had a close and enduring friendship that lasted for decades. They worked closely together at the FBI, often spending long hours together at the office, traveling together, and even vacationing together. They were frequently seen together in social settings such as dinners and events, often without their respective families. Their closeness in public raised eyebrows and led to speculation. Hoover and Tolson lived near each other in Washington, D.C., and shared adjoining hotel rooms when they traveled, even though they could have afforded separate accommodations. Some have interpreted this as a sign of a deeper relationship. Some personal letters between Hoover and Tolson contain affectionate language and expressions of deep devotion. These letters have fueled speculation about the nature of their bond. Neither Hoover or Tolson were ever married, which was relatively uncommon for men of their era. Their single status added to the intrigue. While the FBI was deeply involved in counterintelligence and anti-communist efforts, it also played a role in monitoring and investigating civil rights activists and organizations, which leads us into a pivotal point in history, the 1960s.
All right, folks. Today we're diving into a slice of American history that's juicier than your grandma's apple pie. J. Edgar Hoover and the civil rights scandals of the 60s. Hoover wasn't just any FBI director. He was like the godfather of law enforcement, running the show for nearly 50 years. Turns out, he had some skeletons in his closet. Let's unpack this story, shall we?
The Hoover Show.
Hoover was like the rock star of the FBI. He had the looks, well, kind of, the suits, and the power. But when the civil rights movement heated up in the 60s, things got messy. Hoover saw it as a threat to good old American order.
COINTELPRO, the secretive scheme.
The FBI had this super secret program called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program. It started in the late 50s, and it wasn't about intelligence in the way you might think. Instead, it was about infiltrating, messing up, and even destroying political groups that the government saw as troublemakers. At first, it was all about the communists, but then they set their sights on civil rights activists. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., an iconic leader in the civil rights movement, was a prime target of COINTELPRO's covert activities. The FBI spared no effort in its surveillance of Dr. King, wiretapping his phones, placing bugs in his hotel rooms, and scrutinizing his every move. Agents compiled extensive files filled with personal and potentially damaging information in an attempt to discredit him. Beyond surveillance, the FBI launched psychological warfare campaigns against Dr. King. Anonymous letters were sent, threatening to expose extramarital affairs and encouraging him to take his own life. The infamous suicide letter stands as a haunting example of the psychological torment inflicted on this civil rights icon. Fred Hampton, a charismatic leader of the Black Panther Party's Illinois chapter, was another victim of the FBI's COINTELPRO. The Black Panthers, with their calls for self-defense and social reform, were perceived as a significant threat by the FBI.
Dr. King, the thorn in Hoover's side.
Martin Luther King Jr., a smooth-talking preacher with a dream, became Hoover's arch-nemesis. King was all about peaceful protests and equality, but Hoover thought he was stirring up trouble. So what did Hoover do? He wiretapped King's phones and dug for dirt. That's right, the FBI, the ones supposed to protect us, were spying on a national hero.
The Reverend Martin Luther King is on Bimini writing his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. From his island vacation retreat, King sent FBI Director Hoover a cable suggesting a personal get-together. King responded to Hoover's charge that the civil rights leader was the most notorious liar in the country.
Well, naturally, I was shocked and greatly surprised that Mr. Hoover would make such an unwarranted and vicious accusation. I don't think Mr. Hoover would have made such a statement if he had not been under a great deal of pressure. Probably he is beginning to falter under the awesome responsibilities, complexities, and burdens of his very difficult position, and for this reason, I would not like to get in a public debate with him. I've not done it in the past. My criticisms have always been of the FBI in general.
Do you believe the FBI is doing all it can to resolve civil rights complaints?
Well, I don't know all of the inner workings of the FBI. I do know that in cases that do not involve Negroes and civil rights, the FBI moves with dispatch. It has the machinery, the know-how to find bombings, for instance, of airplanes where you have the wreckage spread over 2 or 3 states. And the fact remains that in spite of all of the brutalities that we faced in Albany, Georgia, not a single arrest was made. In spite of the fact that 4 unoffending innocent Negro girls were brutally murdered in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, not a single arrest has been made. And in spite of the fact that civil rights workers were killed this summer in Mississippi, we haven't seen a single arrest.
The FBI sent anonymous letters to Martin Luther King Jr., often containing derogatory and threatening language. These letters were intended to intimidate and undermine his resolve.
And you know, there are some Negroes who are ashamed of themselves, but don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your biological features. Somehow you must be able to say in your own lives and really believe it, I am black but beautiful.
And here is an example of one of those letters. King, in view of your low-grade, abnormal, personal behavior, I will not dignify your name with either a Mr. or a Reverend or a Doctor. And your last name calls to mind only the type of king, such as King Henry VIII and his countless acts of adultery and immoral conduct lower than that of a beast. King, look into your heart. You know you are a complete fraud and a great liability to all of us Negroes. White people in this country have had enough frauds of their own, but I am sure they don't have one at this time that is anywhere near your equal. You are no clergyman, and you know it. I repeat, you are a colossal fraud, and an evil, vicious one at that. You could not believe in God and act as you do. Clearly, you don't believe in any personal moral principles. King, like all frauds, your end is approaching. You could have been our greatest leader. You, even at an early age, have turned out to not be a leader, but a dissolute, abnormal, moral imbecile. We will now have to depend on our older leaders, like Wilkins, a man of character, and thank God we have others like him. But you are done. Your honorary degrees, your Nobel Prize, what a grim farce. And other awards will not save you. King, I repeat, you are done. No person can overcome facts, not even a fraud like yourself. Lend your sexually psychotic ear to the enclosure. You will find yourself in all your dirt, filth, evil, and moronic talk exposed on the record for all time. I repeat, no person can argue successfully against facts. You are finished. You will find on the record for all time your filthy, dirty, evil companions, male and females, giving expression with you to your hideous abnormalities, and some of them to pretend to be ministers of the gospel. Satan could not do more. What incredible evilness. It is all there on the record, your sexual orgies. Listen to yourself, you filthy abnormal animal. You are on the record. You've been on the record. All your adulterous acts, your sexual orgies extending far into the past. This one is but a tiny sample. You will understand this. Yes, from your various evil playmates on the East Coast to blank, and others on the West Coast. And outside the country, you are on the record. King, you are done. The American public, the church organizations that have been helping, Protestant, Catholic, and Jews, will know you for what you are, an evil, abnormal beast. So will others who have backed you. You are done. King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do. This exact number has been selected for a specific reason. It has definite, practical significance. You are done. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination took place at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. King, who was in the city to support striking sanitation workers, was standing on the motel's second-floor balcony when he was shot. The assassin, James Earl Ray, fired a single shot from a nearby rooming house. The bullet struck King in the lower jaw and traveled through his neck, severing his spinal cord. Despite immediate efforts to save his life, Dr. King was pronounced dead at St. Joseph's Hospital.
We heard what sounded just like a firecracker, or a loud, real loud shot.
I said, Dr. King, that was it. And the bullet exploded in his face.
And he had fallen backwards. And I heard somebody holler, "Oh, Lord."
The bullet knocked him up off of his feet in that direction against that ledger over there.
Did Dr. King say anything?
He didn't say anything. He didn't say anything at all.
It's a hectic scene tonight.
bullet struck Dr. King in the back of the neck. He was rushed to St. Joseph Hospital in critical condition.
Dr. Martin Luther King was received in the emergency room at St. Joseph Hospital at approximately 6:15 p.m.
Well, I just was told that he had been shot. The report I got was in the shoulder. It was serious. That was the report I got from Reverend Andrew Young.
He is in the emergency room and he is in critical condition.
And there was 20 or 30 doctors, and they tried external heart massage, and his respiration muscles were paralyzed and everything else was paralyzed, and he would have lost all his sensations. He still didn't have any blood.
You understand, really a massive wound.
I've never seen a wound like this.
James Earl Ray, the man responsible for the assassination, went on the run immediately after the shooting. A massive manhunt was launched to capture him. Ray was eventually arrested 2 months later in London, England, and was extradited to the United States to face trial. In a surprising turn of events, he pled guilty to the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. on March 10, 1969, and was sentenced to 99 years in prison. The FBI, America's top law enforcement agency, played a significant role in the investigation following King's assassination. Their involvement included assisting local law enforcement in the manhunt for James Earl Ray and providing forensic analysis of the murder weapon. However, it's the FBI's actions prior to the assassination that have raised the most controversy. During the Civil Rights Movement, the FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, conducted extensive surveillance on Martin Luther King Jr. and his associates. They wiretapped King's phone lines, monitored his movements, and even sought to discredit him by gathering information about his personal life, including alleged extramarital affairs. Anonymous letters were sent to King and his wife, Coretta Scott King, in an attempt to disrupt their marriage and reputation. These actions were part of a broader government effort to suppress civil rights activism during the 60s. Hoover viewed King's civil rights movement as radical and potentially threatening to the status quo. The controversies surrounding the FBI's involvement in MLK's life and the events leading up to his assassination have led to numerous conspiracy theories. Some have alleged that the FBI may have had a role in the assassination itself, or at the very least, failed to prevent it due to their surveillance of King. Official investigations have not found concrete evidence to support these claims, but they persist as part of the historical debate. In conclusion, Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination was a tragic moment in American history, marking the end of a remarkable civil rights leader's life. While James Earl Ray was convicted of the murder, and the FBI's role in the assassination remains a topic of controversy, it is essential to remember Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of promoting civil rights and social justice, which continues to inspire generations of activists to this day.